Hello and welcome to Builders, the podcast where we journey through the ups and downs of building great tech products through the perspectives of the people who build them. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Damien Peters to the podcast. With an impressive track record that spans from product management to teaching, Damien is here to share his advice, knowledge, and experience with us. Damien is an adjunct professor of product management at the University of Maryland, College Park, and the University of Colorado, Boulder. His work outside of academia has recently been focused on being the managing partner at Capital Partners. Prior to his current roles, Damien has been at the helm of product management, leading teams at industry giants such as Meta and Zynga, and has played pivotal roles as head of product at 2 startups as well. Damien, a really, really warm welcome to Builders. Lovely to have you on the podcast. How's it going?
It's doing great. Really great to be here. It's always nice to be able to talk and do a podcast. So really appreciate inviting me to be on.
Really appreciate you being here. Thanks. Let's talk first a little bit about your background. Could you share a bit about your early life and what led you to pursue dual degrees, right, in undergraduate studies? You studied 2 at the same time.
Yeah, so in undergrad at the University of Maryland, where I teach now, I studied computer science and economics. And the funny story is, so I was a nerd growing up, really into computers. Dad brought home a 386 processor years ago and got into computers. So by high school, I was building computers in the computer club, studying computer science. I decided and told my father that I actually wanted to change and go into business. Finance and money was really attractive, and he told me no. He said you can get an MBA if you want to later on in your life. But long story short, that kind of mix of computer science and technical and being technical, I really loved Bill Gates and both his ability to be a developer but start a large company led me to layer on that economics with computer science.
Super. And as a professor, you're an adjunct professor, as I mentioned before. This means essentially you're teaching part-time on the side of your work. How do you translate your real world experience? We're going to dive a little deeper into your experience at Meta, Zynga, the companies later on. But how do you translate this real world experience into lessons for your students?
Yeah, that's actually one thing I really focus on and I really try and bring to my classes, that industry expertise. So at the University of Colorado, I teach around tech startups, and this is an undergraduate class. There, I bring in a lot of industry experts. I bring a lot of my personal friends, and they come in and we talk about how they got into tech, what they currently do, trends that they see, and it's very great to have give them access to PMs at Google, engineers at Facebook, designers at Pinterest. Then for example, in my other class, what I really and in both classes, I focus on the assignments. So the assignments, I tell everybody, look, don't think of me as a professor. Think of me as your manager. You need to give me business quality assignments. For example, in one class, they put together a VC pitch deck as their final project. They learn I bring in a VC and they will give them feedback. And in other classes, I have them prepare roadmaps. I have them come up with a team offsite to build and foster community. So by having them actually do the work that they will be as a product manager, I give them a taste of what really working will be like.
Fantastic. And a little bit more about your earlier studies and when you then went out into the world of work. What years are we talking here? How big is your experience?
Yes. I'm old now, as I like to say, until I meet someone older than I. But my first product management role was in 2011 at Zynga. Right before the summer that they announced their IPO, back when they were making $1 billion a year and the stock was doing well. So it's been well over a decade. And since then, I've worked in gaming, social media, I've led product, I've worked internationally at international startups. So I've seen a lot. And it's been really interesting to kind of get that experience, even working in a big bank as opposed to a 8-person fintech startup.
Right. And what was Zynga like back in 2011?
So back then, and I was pre-warned about how intense the Zynga culture was. The
Right.
motto back then was Zynga speed. So you'd go into a meeting, you'd present something, you'd say like, "This will take 2 months." They'd be like, "This is amazing. Get it done in 3 weeks." And you'd say
I
like,
was going to say, yeah, amazing, but we want it done in 2 weeks. So come
"Right, exactly."
on.
And you say like, "Well, how will I get that done?" They say Zynga speed. So I
And
remember
that's it.
being get it done. But it was great. One being a gaming company, I focused more on financial modeling. I learned a lot about understanding average revenue per customer, how monetization work, conversion points, and actually economic modeling.
Mm,
The poker game that I worked on has an economy that if you put in a bunch of chips into the system, it devalues the currency and that affects what you can charge for them.
mm,
So it was extremely quick, but I learned a lot of the key things. And the biggest lesson I took away was how to say no.
right.
First thing my manager said is that you will learn that saying no is going to be more important than having great ideas and being able to execute on them.
And this was back in 2011. How long were you at Zynga for? And your role there was what then? Product manager,
Yeah.
leading a team of what, a multidisciplinary team, or yeah, what was your role?
So I was an intern at Zynga.
Okay.
I was at Zynga for a full 3 months. I had
Mhm.
the option to go back, and at the time, everyone thought I was crazy. In hindsight, it was good to go to one of their competitors. But I led the Android app of mobile poker. At the time, the iOS app was number 2 in the App Store in terms of top revenue grossing apps. I mean, it was a very big opportunity.
Mm.
The Android app didn't have any monetization. I actually launched monetization, and we ended up becoming the number 1 revenue driving app a few weeks after my internship.
Wow.
And incredible experience, I would say, for your first PM job while still in business school.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, moving on after Zynga, did was it then that you joined Meta, or were there other internships
Yeah.
before?
So after Zynga, I joined TinyCo. So TinyCo was a smaller competitor, mobile focused, and basically I was like, Zynga is not moving mobile fast enough. I'm going to go to this mobile first
Mm,
company. They're Andreessen backed, Andreessen Horowitz backed, and great opportunity right out of school.
yeah.
I was there about a year, and then actually experienced my first layoff, a tech layoff, which was interesting in the wild world of startups.
Mm,
Um, Took a little bit of time to do some independent consulting, turned down a few job offers, and then ended up at the time Facebook. It's hard for me to call it Meta.
right.
I
Right.
joke with my old friends. One of my friends, she's a director now. She says I still call it Facebook. Um, but I actually thought Meta was going to be too big of a company. I wanted a small startup. I was like, you guys are old. But a classmate of mine had joined before me, and she was really influential in both convincing me that the company moved fast, had a lot of opportunity, and ended up spending just under 4 years there, about 3 years, and I think it was 9 months.
Super interesting. And what were your primary responsibilities while leading?
Yeah,
You were leading product teams at Meta, right?
I was leading
What did
product
a
team.
I mean, it's such a vast company.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about it. But um, leading product teams at Meta, how did that look like? What did a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So the first, I worked on 2 teams while I was there. The first team was in locations and places. So
Okay.
long story short, there's a places graph, and Google Maps is very, let's say one of the leaders. But Apple, there's several open source platforms. If you remember, even like GPS systems back in the day.
Mm, mm,
My team specifically was called crowdsourcing. So we focused on having people on Facebook help to define and update and refine the location graph. And this was,
mhm.
I, there were several teams that worked on collecting the data in multiple ways, but I did particularly feel strongly about this team because, the people were the unique aspect that Facebook and Meta had at the time.
Mhm.
Um,
And this, just to yeah, clarify, this location graph was essentially where all users of Facebook were
no,
located. Is
this
that right?
is
Or
this is no, this is actually all of the places in the world.
okay,
So
just all right.
yeah,
Okay.
um, if you it's less popular now, but go back 8-ish years, people were checking into places, right? You go to a
Mm,
restaurant, you check
mm.
in, you tag, go to
Yep,
the
makes
you're
sense.
on vacation, right? You need to check in everywhere.
Yep.
um, And I think people underestimate how much effort it does take to actually have a database of every single place in the world and the actual location.
Yeah.
The problem I always said we were trying to solve for is that we wanted every food cart in Thailand. You went to Thailand, you wanted to figure out the best place to get some pad thai.
Mm.
Food carts aren't registered, they move around, right? This is something that you have to go to the people to get. And
Okay.
so there are experiences and understandings that we can get by creating this places graph and by using people.
Hmm.
So our team was focused on getting all the data, getting completing the places, but it's a interesting and tough problem, right? How do you get someone to correct a zip code for their favorite Chinese restaurants, or tag a place, tag this food cart? So it really goes deep into a lot of the time was spent understanding what is the impact of this data, right? So we're collecting all this places graph data. How is that being used at Facebook? What are the types of places that we need to use? Is it more important to get the Eiffel Tower correct or these
Hmm.
food carts, right? Then understanding the user on our end, right? So who's a person that is motivated to correct data? Um,
Mm.
we found out that it's most people are tangentially interested. So, on
Hmm.
average, 1.7 was the number of times someone submitted data. But when you look at the top, let's say 3%, they would average maybe 10,000 submissions.
Right.
We found that people were deeply connected to their community and really found interest there. So, a lot of time was spent there. And then Facebook and a lot of my thinking is driven by data, heavily data
Mm-hmm.
driven company. So a lot of it was we had a lot of my focus was aligning the team to the metric, the KPI, the OKRs that we were driving.
Hmm.
I always kept them on a big dashboard in front of the team so anyone could point to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was helping everyone ensure that their work was rolling up to hit, to be impactful for the team, and that our team was being impactful for the company.
And what was your team? Who was in that team? How big was that team? What were the
Yeah.
different roles?
So that first team I had crowdsourcing, we started out with around, I think, 6 engineers. We eventually got a data analyst. I eventually got a designer as we grew in scope. So when I left, we were probably around like 12 or so.
Hmm.
And then I moved to another team in advertising measurement. So this
Okay.
was around brand measurement at Facebook. And that team was significantly larger. It was around a little under 20.
Hmm. And what were you doing there? What were the responsibilities in that team?
Yeah. So in that team, we had a 0 to 1 problem. So Facebook wanted TV advertising dollars. Basically,
Hmm.
digital advertising had crushed every form of advertising and was eating everyone's lunch except for TV advertising. It continued to grow. People put a premium
Hmm.
on it. And we believed that with measurement and numbers, we could show that digital advertising was more effective against TV advertising. This involved deep partnerships with Nielsen and other providers of content and TV advertising data that simply Facebook didn't have.
Hmm.
So this went from looking at we looked at startups that had means of tracking eye movement while you watch TV and means of rewarding people for this. And we had different theories about showing that people actually are on their phones during big TV moments. And there were means of understanding how TV actually measured their impact. So TV
Hmm.
kind of has to turn on ads in a city and see if they increase sales, whereas digital marketing say, you saw exactly 3.5 ads over 2 days
Yep.
and then went to a purchase. So how
Yep.
do you translate those two? So a lot more focus on partnerships, a lot more going from 0 to 1, understanding the industry, spend a lot more time talking with big advertisers and understanding why, how they determine their TV versus digital advertising budgets, and um, how we could be a part of that process.
And could you talk a little bit more about specific market challenges you face while developing these advertising products at Meta, even the technical challenges as well?
Yeah. So both cases, there were different marketing challenges. When we were working on on location and places, one of the big things that our entire team, so our entire org was maybe 100-ish people. We knew that Google, who we wanted to defeat, had 3 small buildings dedicated to the exact same project and
Mm.
team. And they had a large head up on us in terms of location places. Also, Yelp was a really big player back then.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other people that had access to a ton of different people. Some things in the market that happened and impacted us. For example, Yelp had a class action lawsuit where people who were rating them said,
Mm.
we actually are employees and we deserve equity and compensation.
Okay.
My legal and policy team had a field day with that, basically shutting down and saying no to almost everything until we could configure and understand the legal precedent that was being set.
Yeah. Yeah.
As companies like Foursquare grew and fell, we had to think about how did people use location and places, and how relevant was this to their day-to-day engagement and interaction, how much to invest in this problem.
Mm. And talk a little bit about the kind of like an ultimate use case for Facebook or Meta of the data and that you
Yeah.
were collecting back then.
So one really interesting insight that we found doing user research, and this was we found it in particular. It was in Thailand and a few other Southeast Asian countries. People would check into their home, and they did this as a way to signal everyone else that they had arrived home safe.
Mm-hmm.
So here in the States, it's reasonably common where you'll text someone like, "Hey, did you make it home safely?" And you text back,
Yep.
"Yes, I did."
Yep.
So we found this as a core use case, and funny enough, we adamantly stopped people from adding their homes to Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
We viewed it as we want only publicly available places that anyone can go to. If you add a home, now you've added it to a searchable database. Do people really want that? And we'd get kind of like takedown requests, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
understanding and building for that use case, and then even finding that it wasn't just that one country. One thing that's great about working on such a global product is that you find, this use case in Thailand, and actually find like, oh, in Brazil too, we see similar user behavior, and we can now expand and support that use case. That ended up becoming a feature that we built. It was supporting homes, and part of that fell specifically under our purview because it was primarily around a person adding or engaging with places or places information on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And what was when you were working on these products? Obviously, as part of product management, there's a kind of process where you ideate and you go from ideation to launch and everything. Um, you were leading these teams. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of intricacies involved here and how you kind of manage? Where you said the team was 12 when you left
Yeah.
the location and places, and then this how big was that team?
Around a little under 20, and that team was
20.
mostly engineering, and
Yeah.
it was more shared resources. So the first team was more self-contained.
Right.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the not just at Meta, but in general, the kind of the process from ideation to launch. There's a lot of, generally speaking, a lot of different stakeholders involved. What's your take on this process? It can be quite hard, in my experience.
It can be, and I will say one thing that was somewhat uniquely Facebook Meta, but some companies are moving towards or getting better at, is the level of autonomy that I had leading my product. When I would talk with my manager or my VP, and it took me a while to get used to that. So I came from a system where more of leadership kind of came up with some stuff, and I was really working with stakeholders and things like that. In this case, I remember, for example, a product review came to the VP, and we had this tough question. Honestly, I can't remember the specific question, but it was something we had been battling for months or weeks trying to figure out. So spend all this time getting all the data together, putting together examples of option A and option B, and our thinking and our ideas, and we present it and ask for a solution. He looked at it and said, wow, this is complicated. This is tough. It's I'm really interested to see what you guys come up with. It's what we came up with is what we just presented, and can you tell us the next step? And he's like, honestly, I don't know this problem as well as you. It doesn't seem I can get resources for you. I can be a proponent. Let me know what I can do. So Meta has a very servitude kind of relationship. So less of the case was where I needed to convince stakeholders. It was more of getting all I needed, the resources from them, being very confident in our path forward, charging that, and then communicating upward and outward to say, like, this is what we found, this is where we succeeded, this is where we failed. So when it came to ideation, a lot of it focused on my team, and I'll focus on the crowdsourcing team, that location-based team, because we had way more control over that. We understood, we owned the interface, we knew the data, where it was going to, and that brand advertising measurement, right? We're really trying to understand and break into a market there. So ideation was a lot more fed from, large advertisers said this. Okay, let's see if we can build something and try an experience. On that crowdsourcing team, we had to sit and think about what is important, what is valuable. We did one thing I was very big on was bringing context of the user back to the team. So a lot of product managers, and some don't necessarily engage their team in that level of kind of transparency and understanding of everything. More of, I focus on the user, I come up with features, and I want you to execute and build upon them, and I'm here for answers and questioning.
Could you give an example of features here? One of the features?
So, for example, one was what we call the mobile power editor, right? Okay. So I call this the Vegas name. Yes. I call this the Vegas user model, but like our users, a few of them would touch the surface. So, for example, another feature that we launched, and I'll talk about both of them and how they work together, was if you checked into a restaurant, we'd ask you what type of restaurant it was. It was very important for us to be able to understand the type of food and that it was a restaurant, because this fed into integrations with like DoorDash that we did later on, and delivery services and menus and things like that. If we don't know if it's a restaurant, it kind of breaks everything. Right. So you engage with that. And this is the equivalent of going to a slot machine in Vegas. You go to a slot machine, throw in $1. I'm not a gambler. I just want to try this thing, right? Yeah. Most people stop there. They're not addicted to gambling, and they're not that interested in correcting places data on Facebook. But every 10th, 100th, 1,000th person says, this is actually interesting. I want to go a little bit deeper. Right. And so our on-ramp then was the mobile power editor. This was, we'd give them a notification a little bit later, and we'd say something like, hey, that category helped 20 people. 20 people went to that page and they saw that information, or, So
that notification was kind of pinged to them if they had kind of given you an answer to that kind of question that you were
correct, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, going back to the Vegas model, you got that free card when you to get your slots because you wanted some free drinks to get some points. And now you get a little email, hey, here's $10 of free slot player or something along those lines. Or why don't you try craps this time, right? And in our case, we would lead people to the mobile power editor. So the power editor was designed for those people I mentioned that did that the 10,000 people, right? They had focus groups. They wanted to make sure every coffee shop that they went to was represented correctly on the internet because they knew the owner, or they wanted their city to have all their restaurants categorized so people didn't think they were a desolate or wasteland or something along those lines. Those people we would then kind of bring to this power editor, and we'd give them the value prop, right? Correct data on Facebook, help people understand the places that are important to you and find them and engage with them. And then we'd show them a flow where it would just show them place after place. We started with places they checked into, places that we think that they have a relation to. What's the category of this? What's the phone number here? What's the zip code? And from even their level of engagement, we started to, we can understand a little bit more, okay, you really have no interest in looking up phone numbers, right? You're perfectly fine saying pictures, yes or no. People love pictures and categories, we found out. Yeah. But basically what we were doing was giving you a taste, giving you some exposure to the fact that this thing exists, right? We're creating some awareness. We're then creating an on-ramp through value, right? So, hey, you've set some data, you've helped some people, and now we're giving you an opportunity to go way deeper. And so this is in the Vegas model where you're now spending the entire night drinking Red Bulls, playing craps.
Yeah.
Hoping to go. And so, you find people who really find the value and really appeal, and you get them to be your advocates and really engage highly,
Mhm.
and create that win-win for them.
And what if we were to talk about tools when you're kind of building these features? What, as a product manager, what were some of the most indispensable tools or software that you used
Yes.
at
So
Meta?
A/B testing. Meta has spoiled me forever, and I believe there's a startup that based out of Meta's workflow on both the infrastructure for how we did A/B test, how we got
Hmm.
back the information, and the level of statistical rigor that was
Hmm.
applied when doing these A/B and multivariate tests. And
Hmm.
um, for those who don't know A/B or multivariate tests, easiest example: red button, blue button. What do people
Hmm.
click more?
Hmm.
Multivariate is red button, blue button, and one button has an icon, one button has a word. So you now have a 4x4 matrix of multiple variables that you're testing against.
Yep.
Um, the platform was so great and amazing for both understanding how to apply tests, for understanding all of the tests going on at the company to ensure that there wasn't an overlap, that you didn't accidentally get a misread because you overlapped with someone's A/B test that affected your experiment. Um, and that framework allowed me to, one, get the entire team more comfortable. So suddenly, I came out and started, having these different ideas and experiments. Let's try this. Let's get to validated learning. Big fan of the lean startup method and validated learning.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, then suddenly the team would see what was working and what wasn't working. They would start to have ideas. And they would, we now had, going back to that ideation, right? The team
Hmm.
is now coming up with ideas for these tests based on our metrics, our alignment, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And then to the point where now the team is just telling me whether or not the test succeeded or not. The engineers were capable of coming up with tests on their own. Either they could directly
Hmm.
work with design, or if it didn't require a lot of design, correctly implement it. And that tool and that strategy is one of the, in my opinion, one of the biggest successes of my career, because it allowed me to distribute and scale the impact of the team. It took something that is oftentimes isolated in product managers
Hmm.
and brought it to the rest of the team, and both helped them feel more engaged. They
Yep.
felt like they had more control. And also, I think PMs need to understand that they are not the sole creator of ideas. They need to feed, pull from their team and other resources to get the best results.
Hmm. And I'm also a little bit interested to talk about kind of what it's probably far more difficult at a company like Meta, Zynga as well, that are kind of far bigger than maybe the startups that you've worked in the past as
Mhm.
well. And it'd be interesting to get your take on kind of how companies like that focus on um, their core, essentially, what it is that the features that they're going to build, and making sure that those features are what kind of have most impact for the company. Because of course, on the face of it, this is simple. You know what is the core of the company. You know what you should focus on, but the question is kind of how did Meta, for example, or Zynga, kind of ensure that I would assume several different product teams are kind of working on things that are really having true value on the direction of the company. Was this always something that came kind of top down, or how did that work?
Yeah. So recently, I just gave a keynote, actually last week, called Data Driven Product Management. It was like how companies like Meta use these tools to drive success.
Mm.
And the end of the presentation, my key takeaway was value is king, and data helps us to find, unlock, and optimize for value.
Mhm.
Uh, at Facebook, we called value impact and value impact. And I'd say, value or impact at its core hits two bodies, either the user or the business.
Mhm.
Facebook was 100% without regards, clear cut, that the goal was to drive user value to the user, and that business value and things like that will come, or that
Mhm.
the ads team will figure it out. Like you
Yep.
drive value to the
Exactly.
user.
It's
Yeah.
all about the ads, right? Yeah.
Basically, like there's another team thinking about monetization, but it frees you from being bothered necessarily around the actual business model. You can just think about the user value model.
Yes. Yeah.
What was valuable kind of is, I'd say, defined at the top and then expected to be interpreted and reprocessed by you, right? So I mentioned that high level of autonomy.
Yep.
And what I would kind of say oftentimes is at the company all hands, Mark would come up and he'd say, community. We are focused on community. Or, for example, when Facebook got good at mobile, he was like, mobile is number one. You were not allowed to submit a new feature or idea unless it was mobile first. There were mobile first mocks, and there was an understanding of why it was beneficial for the mobile strategy.
Yeah.
Similarly, when we started moving towards communities. So as on my team, and really for everyone, through performance reviews, through discussions, through how we orient ourselves, we need to be driving impact, and that impact is based on what we care about as a company. As a company, we care about driving communities and the social interaction and things like that. And I know that my team falls in a certain organization. Ours was called utility, that we need to drive utility to the consumer, to for the user. And at the top of the company, at the time, there was an equation that explained the company so everyone could understand quantitatively exactly how you mattered.
Right. So how their individual work was kind of contributing to that kind of value impact. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So impact was defined as the number of users, aka growth, and that was one of the 4 organizations, multiplied by the amount of time spent or the engagement they have, which was the engagement org, which focused on engagement.
So the amount of time they spent
on Facebook,
the app,
on Facebook,
scrolling. Yeah.
Yes. Multiplied by revenue, the average revenue per user, like monetization, which was the ads team.
Yep.
So they focused on, and then multiplied by kind of the utility. And this one was a little fuzzy, but the utility points driven to the user. So there were 4 orgs. There's this one equation that drives impact. So you understand that you're increasing users, you're increasing engagement, you're increasing monetization, or you're driving that user value. So I knew that my team needed to drive user value. I knew that I had to spend a lot of time and effort. It took months, actually, to both effectively measure how well we were doing at defining and correcting places and where that value was going to the company. So we talked everywhere in the company because our data fed to other teams. We needed to understand where it was and what the value was and the impact that was going to be driven. So in a company like that, it really was this alignment of impact. Everyone lived and breathed and thought about it. We spent a lot of time and a lot of money using metrics and data, whether qualitative or quantitative, to be able to independently show that I was driving value there. Transparency was extremely high at the company, so it wasn't I can argue that I'm driving value. It is that I am transparently showing what I worked on. I understand the metrics. There's an equation, things like that.
Super interesting to hear kind of how each individual and kind of their role in the team was that, you were given that focus on how you were kind of individually and kind of as a team contributing to that part of a bigger equation. This is a super interesting way to look at it, because I know, speaking for us as well, at Proxify, it's this kind of need to ensure that we're all focused on kind of how we can all impact the company's main KPIs, essentially, and our own kind of individual and team roles in that as well. So super interesting. What advice would you give to product managers or leaders working in similarly high stakes, fast paced environments? I can imagine that both Zynga and Meta in particular were kind of very, very kind of fast paced. I wouldn't maybe not use the word cutthroat. I'm not sure. You tell me if they were. But what advice would you give to others kind of looking to work in similar environments?
Yeah. So intensity is the word I like to use. They were intense. To be perfectly honest, one of the reasons I'm a teacher is because my wife got pregnant again, which was the plan. The reason I originally left Facebook was when she got pregnant, she asked me if I was going to see the baby. And as she explained what that meant, she was like, you are good at your job, but you are always there.
You're married to your job.
Exactly. I flew a lot for work. I ate dinner at work every single day, things like that.
Okay.
So One is I did, I think, acknowledge and understood what was both, I think, being asked and required of me and whether I was comfortable with that. I think
Mhm.
there's a personal choice on whether you want to work like that. And even
Right.
different orgs and different teams had their different qualities specific within the company.
Mhm.
Um, there is but the general framework I like to think about it is, and this is for anyone kind of individually, how to think about your career and working in product, but you should have a goal, a long-term goal. It could be crystal clear, your North Star, as we talk about in product, right?
Mhm.
Your
Mhm.
personal North Star. And that may be, I want to be VP of product at Google, a Facebook, a Uber, or whatever it is. Maybe I want to be a founder. It may just be
Mhm.
that I want to have a nice, easy life at some point. I just want to,
Mhm.
retire in the government or something like that.
Mhm.
Then be crystal clear around, or much more crystal clear around the next step, right? So that's off in the distance, maybe a 5, 10 year, 15 year, 3 year horizon. But what is like the next thing that, given your current place where you're going, that's going to get you there? Is it that you need to, you've decided that you want to be a growth PM functionally, you want to go
Mhm.
down functionally, as opposed to, let's say, industry focus, social media. So you need to get and you're not in growth. So your next step is to get a role in growth. Or if you know that you currently like your role in company and you just want to get to the next level, your next step is to get promoted. If
Mhm.
your goal is to join a FANG organization at a large tech company, your goal is to meet someone at one of those companies, right? To
Right.
learn more about those roles. And then you have to be obsessed with that level of intensity that
Yeah.
uh, a lot of my close friends know me for, but I tend to be pretty easygoing nowadays. But around today and the current, you need to be doing
Mhm.
everything to make sure that right now you are maximizing what you're doing for that next step. And that
Yep.
means crushing it at work. It means networking like crazy, but in pursuit of the next step. It means ups leveling your skills through friends, new projects,
Yep.
through external opportunities, but all in pursuit of that next step.
And making sure you stay relevant,
Exactly.
essentially. It's super interesting, and I think we'll kind of come back to some of the more kind of product management related questions. But I want to step into a little bit about into the teaching of product management.
Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about you having was it a second baby that kind of made you
Yeah.
or was kind of yeah, one of the reasons why you left Facebook. Was this then the kind of motivation for you to take up the role as a professor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so it was the first child where I left Facebook, and to go take a step further, I ended up moving to Spain for 2 years to
Oh wow.
yeah. I dare say a bit of that stereotypical burnout, like let me go do something crazy afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then so the second time around, when the second I had my company, I'd started a company, Wealth Noir. We had just been acquired by Savvy Wealth. I was employee number 8, leading head of product.
Hmm.
Immensely fun. Loved the space that I was in. Extremely, just a lot of work, a lot of time, and was concerned about what life was going to look like once my second child came, and whether I
Right.
would see them. Also in stereotypical fashion, as after being acquired, I left after within the first year. Um, Being acquired was much more fun and enjoyable than having been acquired, as I now need to come back into a role in team and managers. Um, so after that, I was trying to decide what to do next and whether to go grab another job, go back into PM and find my next role, or whether to
Hmm.
take some time to myself. A friend of mine had been doing adjunct professoring for several years at Georgetown in the journalism school. She had always spoken highly of it. She really enjoyed it, but it does not pay well. um, it is very much
Right.
a labor of love. So
Yeah.
I started looking into it more as something to do on the side. I was trying to, I generally ascribe to a portfolio career. So, right now, the way I approach my career is that I do 3 things. I teach. I work on real estate through WN Capital Partners, and then I also do consulting and speaking with product management organizations, executives, and companies. So those 3 areas of my life, and the teaching side. I love to teach. I've always done product coaching. So I've actually done interview coaching for years where people looking to get into big tech companies. And so it all was a LinkedIn DM. We knew each other years ago. She was a professor. She reached out. I was supposed to speak at the class, and it ended up getting canceled because of snow. And she said, "Do you want to teach the class?" I was like, "You happen to catch me at this perfect moment of." I called it my year of saying yes.
Fantastic. And how long have you been teaching there?
So just over a year now. I teach. I've now taught both classes 2 semesters each. The product management, I teach the intro to fundamentals of product management in the master's program at Maryland, and then it's a senior level in the engineering management school class on tech startups.
Fantastic. And I can imagine, obviously, you can talk about product management as both like an art and a science, right? So there's obviously, I assume there's a bit of the kind of theoretical that goes into the classes. And obviously you have a wealth of experience that you can bring to those classes for all the students. But tell us a little bit about how your kind of wealth of experience has influenced and informed your classes, essentially, and how you teach.
Yeah. So I will say the whole thing's super weird. Whole thing's super weird for me because I'm a practitioner, right? And also product management and even tech startups. Tech startups are a little bit further ahead, but definitely product management as a field of study is new. The fact that there's a master's of product management. When I got my master's 10 years ago, there was 8 classes in product management, and we learned how to build cars.
Yeah.
So it is nice to both. Given the randomness, I like to say, of my experience, seeing international, different industries, working on a nonprofit as a product manager on a physical product, which was like a mastermind. It's been interesting to see the different approaches and what works and kind of like the different nuances of product. And as a professor, I get to think a little bit more high level about the students and where they're at, right? Not everyone is working on a $100 million product at a multi-billion dollar company with these extreme examples. Sometimes stakeholder engagement is significantly more important. Culture is very different at very different companies. Product in many companies now is just like the general zeitgeist now is that product is the way to organize companies. So a lot of PMs were thrust into this role and haven't been birthed in like obsession over the user. So it's great to be able to think of the overall, what is the core of product management, what are the things that help make people successful, and then being able to bring in a actual, some of the theory is great, but realistically, you're going to get pushback. Realistically, you need to convince someone and not just tell them that it's a good idea. So that's something I really like to bring into the class.
And I guess a lot of that kind of theory, as good as it is the work that you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it in a particular organization is also going to be kind of influenced by the organization itself and the culture there and the ways of working, right? But could you share let's say your kind of your overarching philosophy on product management, and how has this evolved over your career?
Yeah. So a lot, it has evolved over time. I'd say a lot of it core was highly influenced at my time at Facebook because at the time too, just amazing product culture, amazing. There were like around 125 folks. Several of them have gone on to be CEOs, founders, VPs, and such at Facebook, and have communities and followings around product. So value is king, right? The core thing that I think about product managers is that you need to be thinking about impact and the value. Like your product should be benefiting someone, and that's the most important thing. Especially in certain cultures and certain teams and certain environments, and those who are coming from a project management or companies that are new to it, they may be thinking of execution, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
about getting product out. The number of products that I ship is my outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Throughput is sometimes the enemy and death of quality or impact.
Yeah. Right.
Because you're focused on getting things done as opposed to having that impact.
Mm-hmm. And pleasing maybe many different kind of stakeholders, or requests flying at you from loads of different angles, and not focusing on what truly matters. Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And along with that, the ability to say no. So it was my mentor at Zynga, who was, as an intern. He was like, "What do you want to do during this internship?" I was like, "I want to launch stuff." And he's like, "Cool, no problem. You're going to launch a bunch of stuff. That's the easy part." He's like, "The hard part is going to be the fact that you're going to have 10 things that you want to do. You have to realize the 5 of them that are going to be a good idea, and then you only can actually do 2 of them, and probably only 1 of them well."
Yeah.
Your ability to ruthlessly prioritize, really focus on what's important, is going to be what defines success.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is a key skill is storytelling. The product management role is fundamentally influential, right? Typically, your team is not your direct reports. Multiple times have I tried to get engineers fired from my team because I have issues with them, to be told that you are not my manager, you cannot fire me. So how will I either influence them to do better or influence someone else to fire them? Cross-functional, engagement, being able to be the advocate for your product, for other team members, for other product teams, for stakeholders, for getting resources is going to be a key skill. So being able to tell a story, help people both empathize and understand, and I find it helps retention and understanding for really difficult, complex concepts, especially around data. I think all PMs now need to be understand and deeply feel for data. This can be controversial.
Yes. Yep.
Not everyone fully believes, and it's to different scopes. But whether it's qualitative, whether it's quantitative, thinking about ways to get evidence and move forward with evidence-based thinking, because a lot of your assumptions are based in biases that may or may be incorrect.
Is this something that you saw resistance to in some of the teams that you've been leading, when it comes to kind of data and you trying to be really data driven? Did you really kind of face resistance there? Was it not like, look, I have this qualitative data, this is what the data says, we need to do this, whatever it might be, and you had that kind of resistance?
Yes, in multiple ways, in multiple different forms. I'll give 2 examples. One, working at TinyCo in gaming, the artist on my team. So in gaming, you have a game designer who's drawing, the characters and things like that. She hated numbers so much, she actually told me that her clock at home was based on colors because she did not want numbers in her house.
Fantastic.
One of my success stories was by the end of our time together, she was actually looking at people's engagements with different characters she had drawn and different screens, and was taking that feedback into how she approached artistic design. She learned to read the user and bring that back, as opposed to maybe just conceptually thinking about it.
Right.
And the second area of resistance, and this is in particular very common in Spain, and certain European models, especially just where also in like banking and in certain industries where there's this very much hierarchical view, right? So I remember talking with the CPO of a very successful Spanish tech company, and he mentioned that it's shocking at the scale that we're at and the level that we're at and success we are. Oftentimes, many product decisions are the CEO thought this would be a good idea. It's not driven by here's what the analytics says, here's what the customer says. It is not as much of a meritocracy as we'd see or like to see in true product thinking. So this is non-trivially still a problem in many, many organizations.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it's kind of, it kind of baffles one that it's still so today, but at the same time, maybe it's not so surprising.
Yes.
But very, very interesting to kind of get your take and that kind of philosophy when it comes to product management. And I'd like to talk a little bit also about product management and the future. you probably have a lot of thoughts here, but I mean, obviously, we have kind of the age of AI, right, and everything. How do you see the role of a product manager evolving as artificial intelligence is becoming more and more integrated into product development and into lots of different decision making processes?
Yeah. So one fundamental aspect is going to be truly being able to help understand, utilize, and grok the immensity of information that we now collect and have. Right. So
Right.
um, you have insane amounts of data that you actually have been collecting. You potentially have access now to third party or alternative or comparable or
Mm-hmm.
benchmarks or data sources. You
Mm-hmm.
have insane base of knowledge now in terms of what we understand in users and how we approach different tactics and like how many survey questions are good to ask in a financially based product that's heavily regulated as opposed to doing user journeys and things like that. So now
Mm-hmm.
PMs, I think, have the ability to what they just had to do personally, just read everything, just be present, understand, know everything, being able to spit out references and connect the dots. We now have way more help. We now have access to large LLMs, company wikis, meeting notes, like meeting minutes now become now
Yeah.
a wealth of information and understanding about like what we've done over a team over a period of time. And I think connections will be made that just were extremely hard or extremely expensive to make in the past.
Do you feel that there's a risk, for want of a better word, of course, a kind of risk posed by AI when it comes to the product manager role? Or do you think it's just a matter of the kind of product manager kind of adapting and kind of ensuring that their skill sets are up to date and relevant in working with AI? Or do you see that AI could essentially kind of replace that role in the future?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely both. Uh, I like to point to so I'm generally just as a technologist. I'm always love bleeding at technology. I think as a society we have been shown that we haven't nuclear warred ourselves to death. Like
Yeah.
all right, we haven't like rap music didn't rot all of our brains. Video games didn't make all of us psychopaths. Things like that, right?
Right, right.
We've put in systems and regulations. Everything is still messy, but
Hmm.
it's it was messy in the past, right? There was a lot
Yeah,
more
yeah.
issues. So with AI, I think that along with many technological revolutions, the equivalent I use is the movie Hidden Figures. When the computer and the calculator was invented, there were literally people whose jobs were to do hard math. Like they
Right, right.
sat and just understood numbers really well. That job went
Yes.
away. But I think they both found and adapted to find different ways to apply their knowledge and
Hmm.
intellect. So I think some roles will either collapse, condense. A lot of junior roles, like you may not need someone to write all of your PRDs because you
Hmm.
can spend 5 minutes and have the AI, and work with AI. You
Right.
can, have AI
Yeah.
do that. But I think the AI becomes still more of a tool, a unit, a person, a resource on the team to be guided, understood, and utilized. And the
Hmm.
truth is, what's really going to happen is everyone's expectations will slowly, quadruple and triple, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
PM will take on more scope, whether that is
Yep.
either more products or more actions, or they'll just expect to deliver faster, to have better insights because everyone will have access to better tools.
Hmm.
Computers did not, destroy the job of you know, receptionists, or
Hmm. Hmm.
people who took notes. It evolved
Right.
and we adapted.
And it made those individuals essentially have to adapt, and keep their skill sets up to date. I think, yeah, I can kind of also reason that it's more a matter of kind of augmenting individuals at the moment, at least, and propelling them into kind of
Yeah,
being able to maybe deliver more, be more productive.
yeah. One thing I
What the
do,
future holds is kind of
yeah,
hard to. I don't like thinking too far into the future
no.
at the moment. You know.
I do think one immediate thing that we are seeing is that I think the tech industry, though, and product managers for those looking for jobs, looking to switch,
Mm.
is going through a kind of rapid stabilization. Um,
Yeah.
comparable I like to make is in finance. You used to be able in like the 80s, I think, come out of school, get a job, buy a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Tech was definitely that for the last, for a long period of time. I think AI is going to change both the efficiency and capacity. And so the desire and need to hire as many people and pay them as much money is going to change. And I think, uh, and as so, one, you're going to see a lot of high quality talent dumped into the talent pool. Some of this will disperse. So government agencies, there are nonprofits that are getting amazing talent now because of this kind of shakeup. But I think that is something that AI will like. You will see kind of, I think, tech companies approach hiring and capacity and resource planning very differently, and how people, I think, non-tech agencies will benefit significantly from a lot of that. But it'll be tough for some people to adapt.
Yeah, for sure. And are there any particular tools or projects or kind of products that you're really excited about at the moment? I mean, when it comes to product management tools, obviously you've got a kind of AI powering a lot of different tools out there into kind of, but also into different kind of roadmap products as well. Are there any specific projects or tools that you're excited about?
So where I've been trying to focus a little bit more on is using cases where I can use more generalized AIs and customized and adapt them to said system. Partially just from a cost standpoint, like it is not cheap to have like Notion AI and like ClickUp AI and then like Google Docs AI and things along those lines, as opposed to being able to have one system that integrates more holistically. I across the different major AI systems, I do actively use ChatGPT, Claude, and Anthropic's offering, along with Gemini, and Google and Gemini. Those are the primary three. And
do you feel like they're each of them are good at different things, or is there one that are kind of standing out for you personally?
They're all good at different things. I've been trying to consolidate and use one over the other. But I like Claude's ability. It's larger window. I find it deals better personally with large text and aspects around that. Also, sometimes it's just better at coding. I find Gemini, when I need to go to the internet, it's a little bit better because it's built by Google. It can.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then I find ChatGPT in particular with the customized GPTs, that has been a really big game changer. For example, I also use like Midjourney. I was able to find a custom GPT that would take a concept and generate specific Midjourney prompts that I could then use to Midjourney to create better photos. I'm also starting to play with things like Make.com and Zapier to start doing more connected things. So, for example, one flow I'm trying to work on is I can kind of spit out an idea and loose notes for a project plan, have that be sent to a customized agent specifically focused on, for our company, for helping to build out project plans based on the skills of our team and our knowledge and things like that, and then be able to generate a response. One product I've been I started using Obsidian. It's a note-taking system of personal knowledge management. And there's a community plugin called Copilot that actually allows you to use AI amongst your own notes database, and allows you to switch between different APIs. That personally has been a game changer for me.
Okay.
I have not found anything that has allowed me to use my own data resources amongst multiple APIs, and I've found that different APIs handle different tasks differently, but from projects, doing research, to coming up with presentations or prepping for this interview.
Nice. And is a lot of this in the kind of explosion in AI and the different models? You touched upon a few there. How's this influencing some of your classes that have been given? You touched upon back 10 years ago or however long it was that you were studying. Same with me. There weren't these kind of specific courses or rather closer degrees that were focused on product management, for example. But they have become much more available as courses in themselves. How is AI now kind of influencing how you're teaching the courses?
Yeah. One I'll say has been super interesting to see and hear kind of like academia and how we think and approach it.
Mm,
You have professors that are like, destroy it, block it on like, the entire university computers and like,
mm,
hang them up by their necks if they touch it. Whereas others are essentially, one person explained that he was an engineer, and when the calculator was invented and everyone was using the slide rule, the calculator seemed the same level of apprehension as AI. If we let these kids
right.
use it, they won't understand the core basics, things like that. My approach has been, it is a tool that you need to use and understand and utilize, but both understand where it will mess you up and where it can help.
Hmm.
I tend to tell them places and uses that I think it's good for them. Hey, if you
Yep.
forgot some stuff, it's good to help it have a refresher. You can give it the lecture, the transcript from the lecture, and have it point out some key points, things along those lines.
Hmm.
Um, if you're looking for ideation or helping come up with the outline. But on the same note, I've had someone copy and pasted accidentally their actual ChatGPT script into their midterm um, with prompts and all.
Accidentally.
Yes, because shout out if you're watching this, but they had reached out to me and asked, "Hey, professor," and so, how do you address that, right? Were they
Mm,
cheating? Was it,
right.
was it a tool? Did I lack, so there's been things
But
like that.
universities are kind of getting up to speed, and they have things in place in order to detect,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And I'd say
Yeah.
my general approach, and at least with the schools, and it's kind of like Wikipedia, right?
Mm,
It's a thing. Let us know that you're using it. Understand it's not fully, but you cannot rely on it.
right.
And if there are times so my feedback to people will be like, "This felt like it was generated by generative AI."
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
tone, the structure, things along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess maybe even in your classes, when you kind of get to know the different students and maybe kind of who they are, they're kind of the way they write and everything. It's the same at a company, right? You have your
Exactly.
colleagues, you know how they write and everything. I think
Exactly.
I can kind of know if something is generated by AI or not. Particularly for those that I work closely with. And it's not a problem if it is sometimes. It's just a matter of like
Yeah.
ensuring
And,
that you can trust it, right?
yeah. And one thing too, I will say, it has immensely helped being a professor. Um,
Right.
there are cases where I'm like, okay, I need an example of a company that exemplifies
Yeah.
growth marketing strategy,
Yeah.
using uncommon techniques, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or refining, I have an idea of an assignment, I'll write it and have it help me refine and ensure that's in the
Mm.
same format and things like that.
Yeah.
Generate
Yeah.
FAQs and stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah, I've got a brother as well who's also teaching, and his kind of lesson plans and everything
Exactly.
is helping him greatly with those. So yeah, I can imagine. I wanted to also just to before we kind of round off here, I wanted to ask you about any books or authors that have profoundly influenced your thinking and your career path. You mentioned, I think, very very briefly, Lean Startup earlier, right?
Yes. So it is required reading in both of my classes. Eric Reese,
Fantastic.
if you come across this, I'd love to
Yep.
talk, love to have you.
Popular book here at Proxify as well. I can say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I find like, it has strong applications for product management, for startups,
Mm,
for anyone who
absolutely.
is running a company and needs to find value.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of Marty Kagan. Inspired is actually another book I think is really great for that didn't exist when I was a product manager.
Right.
I read it recently, starting. So that's one thing that's interesting being a professor. Right? I now read these books that talk about
Yeah.
like, oh, that you're right. Like that is how most product orgs have been structured. Um,
Yeah.
but it's been amazing to hear how it breaks down and introduces things that took a lot of years and hard learned lessons. Um, and a lot of the content they produces, in particular, I'm a big fan of also.
Hmm. And you said that was called, sorry.
That was Marty Kagan and
Yeah.
Inspired.
Inspired. Yeah.
Yes, he's written a few books, and I can't remember all of them. He has there. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head.
Mm. Nice. And any others?
Um, there's, and I'll struggle with the author. Not gonna kill me, but the Build Trap. So going back to, especially for companies that are let's say, looking at companies like a Meta or Google and like, I wonder how these people, think about this. And the build trap is, I think, the more common case of our focus is to output products as opposed to
Right.
meet some outcome or deliver value. And
Mhm.
the build trap, whether you watch there's a talk on for one, it's on YouTube, that it's required watching in one of my classes. Then
Mhm.
book that accompanies it. But I think the build trap is really good, especially for those one dealing maybe with organizations, or they're coming from project management, or they're trying to understand a little bit of getting how to get out of the mode of just delivering and
Mhm.
optimizing for the value that is achieved and the outcomes. Oh,
That takes us back to that kind of ensuring that kind of laser focus on what really matters, right there, impact
exactly.
and value. Yeah.
And let me try the book that started Jobs to Be Done. Oh, why can't I remember it off the top of my head? This is one thing. I read so many books. I've gotten to the
Mhm.
point where I just, uh, you know, I remember the concepts,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
You get
Chris,
sometimes get the authors mixed up, maybe.
exactly. But Christensen, Clayton Christensen. Yes, Competing Against Luck, Clayton Christensen.
Mhm.
So this was the actual book where he
I haven't heard of
described
that one.
Jobs to Be Done. Originally, it was when I was working on innovation at City Ventures. We dug into a lot of this because there's a lot of like how to teach innovation.
Right.
But I think the Jobs to Be Done framework. So now, even when I talk about kind of the core thing that we focus on as PMs, I talk about either user problems, user pain points, user needs, or jobs to be done now. It's
Mhm.
an interesting way to approach it.
Super. Thanks for sharing. And I think that rounds it off. Is there anything you wanna share before
So
I wrap up?
no, one, great to be here, and I'd say in my new kind of focus, it is nice to have a little bit more flexibility to really dig into things that are personally interesting to me. One area
Mhm.
that if people are interested in reaching out to me, I have a newsletter called the Pragmatic Mr. Peters. So it's
Nice.
pragmaticpeters.com.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, focus a little bit of lifestyle design. So now that I've kind of outside of just the grind and the burnout
Mhm.
and that balance and how I approach it, I like to talk about product management and tech also, and things that are going on with me. Um, and WN Capital Partners, very new challenge, starting a company primarily focused on private equity and real estate, as
Mhm.
opposed to high growth and tech. But for those who are, I find especially those who are in tech and have thought financially, have struggled a little bit financially. They've bought a Lambo but don't have any, equity or
Right. Right.
private investments.
Yeah.
That's where we focus. So we really focus on real estate investing, and love to both that kind of teaching mentality help people grow and engage there. And then
Mhm.
lastly, both individuals who are looking to, expand their product career, whether it's to level up in their career as an executive, or they're trying to break in or move into big
Mhm.
tech, along with companies and organizations. So at this stage of my life, I really like to take that blend of experience. I love having that view of both practicing and being able to a little bit more academic, and actually come into product organizations and be hands on. I love my students, but it is nice to deal with organizations dealing with real problems, being able to tactically come in and again just
Right.
have impact.
So you won't be becoming a full-time professor anytime soon. You'll be sticking to that kind of
It's
part-time role.
To be honest, I think I could do both, but
Okay.
this is going back to the portfolio career. One of my bucket list items is to go back and get a PhD in economics.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of aspects of economics actually directly relate to product management, as thinking about how you think about people and systems, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantastic, Damien. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. Yeah, for me, it's really enlightening and inspiring, and I hope it was also for all our listeners. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to catch more episodes like this, where we will continue deep diving with industry leaders to bring you the very best insights from the world of business and technology. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep on building and keep on innovating. See you soon.